Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian here at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington, D.C. at the Institute's How to Organize Military Space Conference, and we're honored to have with us the chairman of the House Strategic Forces Subcommittee, Mike Rogers, who is from Calhoun County in Alabama, Republican member. Sir, thanks very much for taking some time with us.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
You have been a passionate advocate for a Space Corps. You made that case again. The U.S. Air Force has said that would have devastating implications for the force. It operates as an integrated air and space force. It's prided itself on that, makes the case that it has some of the finest professionals in the space business wear the Blue Air Force uniform. Why are you so passionate about this issue? Why do you feel a Space Corps is absolutely essential?
Well, most people don't realize that space has become integral to our ability to fight and win wars. Most people don't realize how much space is involved in their daily lives just here domestically. Well, the same thing's happened with our military over the last 12 to 15 years, is we have become heavily reliant on space for just day-to-day functions in the military that deal with warfighting. And during that same period of time, our adversaries have recognized that and begun to develop capabilities to threaten our ability to win and fight and win wars. Those capabilities have forced us to acknowledge that what we've been doing is too slow and not meeting the challenges, and we've got to change.
What are the specific changes you think splitting the Air Force in two effectively would, what's the benefit of that? How would it concretely change and accelerate have the acceleration properties that you would like to see?
I think first it would develop a culture that's focused around the #1 mission of space dominance. Right now, the Air Force's #1 mission is air dominance, and it always will be. Space will always be subordinate. I want an organization that's completely focused on space dominance. I want it to develop an educational system around that. I want it to have its money protected and segregated so that it can't be pulled off for other missions. And I want it to have a streamlined acquisition process. That's a big deal. The currently it's taken us 6 to 8 years from the time a COCOM tells us they need a capability in space till it's actually up there. Private sector, it's 18 to 24 months. In NRO, it's 3 years. We cannot continue this 6 to 8 years of going over cost, over budget, and over time schedule and getting space assets up there. And so that's why we took milestone decision authority, which is basically final say-so on acquisition processes, away from the Secretary of Defense and gave it down to the Secretary of the Air Force. And we allow the Secretary of the Air Force to design from scratch the acquisition system. It can be as simple and streamlined as she wants it to be. And what I would like to see is a system that's something comparable to the private sector and NRO, which is in the 2 to 3 year time frame of getting assets into space.
Is there anything that the U.S. Air Force can tell you to stop this from happening? Are there any guarantees, any promises, any organizational changes that would convince you that we don't need a separate Space Corps?
Absolutely not. I really do believe that if the Air Force could fix this, they would have by now, because this has been talked about for 2 decades in a serious way. But it goes to that cultural thing. Air dominance is always going to be their #1 mission. They're always going to take resources and apply them against that mission to the expense of other missions. And we can no longer allow space to be a subordinate mission. It's got to be #1 for somebody.
You are the chairman of the Strategic Forces Committee. Strategic Forces are in the limelight right now. Talk to us about your priorities, and also, Congress historically has made the money available for the military services for the nuclear mission. It's above and beyond coming out of budget hide. Talk to us a little bit about how that's going to play out. You guys have language on that. There is margin for that. How is this $1 trillion nuclear modernization that's absolutely necessary for the nation? What's the right way to fund this massive bill?
Well, I think we've taken a good step in this year's authorization and the budget proposal that we've got. And President Trump has come around on that. He initially had a lower number than we thought would meet our needs. But he's come around, and a lot of it had to do with this North Korean threat that we're dealing with. So I think the numbers that we've got proposed for this year will get us on a trajectory to, in an aggressive way, but also a responsible way, be able to get after our modernization needs. We've got a lot of missile defense needs that we have not addressed yet, and that I'm going to be talking more about in the next week or two that we need to be more serious about.
Are you confident that the nation's missile defenses are adequate in the event the North Koreans try to do something against the continental United States?
Yes, but we could do a lot more that would give us more options if we had been investing more wisely in recent years.
And what are some of those systems you think that can give us that elasticity you want?
Some boost phase missile defense technologies. We have some directed energy weapon systems that we could be maturing that would really be game changers for us that we need to invest in.
All eyes are obviously on Congress to see whether or not you can avoid a government shutdown, raise the debt ceiling, and now you've got Harvey, but also Irma now is a Category 5 storm, the likes of which we haven't seen in a very long time. May hit Florida, could end up in Mississippi and Alabama as well, depending on where the track goes. Talk to us a little bit about how this budget process is going to play out. The department's not getting as much money as it wanted. Are you confident that Congress is going to keep the government open, fund the defense budget? Walk us through how this process is likely to work.
It's going to be ugly, but it's always ugly. I can't overstate that. My 15th year here, the budget vote's the toughest vote of the year every year. Raising the debt ceiling is always an incredibly painful vote. Whether or not we do a CR or don't do a CR, it's always painful, but in the end we get our business done. We'll get it done again this time. This happens to be an unusually pressure-filled situation with the hurricane spending, but I think one of the things that what Kim Jong-un is doing is helped us recognize that we don't have an option about not funding our capabilities to keep this nation free and safe. Just like we don't have an option as to whether or not we're going to take care of folks that were just hit by Hurricane Harvey. I mean, you just got to do what you got to do.
Do you think the hurricane spending could put pressure on defense spending?
It could. There'll be some dialogue to that effect, but I think in the end we'll get it done.
One last question. Are you afraid that the disruption of breaking the Air Force apart like this is going to hamper the mission, hamper the operational effectiveness, or do you think that that's a price worth paying for the long-term benefits?
Yeah, absolutely. I keep telling people, I know that it's going to be disruptive in the short term, but I want some disruption because what we're doing now is making us fall behind our adversaries. It is not an option. I want disruption, but I want it to be short-term disruption. That's why I didn't propose a Space Force like I had been earlier. I'd been talking about just going ahead and separating space out of the Department of the Air Force and set up a whole new department. I felt like that was too disruptive. I think this is just the right fit to keep the mission in the Department of the Air Force, but just segregate it. So it's a little disruptive, but not dramatically disruptive.
Sir, thanks very much for joining us. We really appreciate it.